there's a different flavor of codependency for modern women. And I knew it so well because it was my own flavor. It was what I had experienced in my life, which is you being overly invested in the feeling states, the outcomes, the circumstances, the finances, the situations, the careers of the people in your life to the detriment of your own internal peace. So what does that mean? It means as women, as empaths, as lovers, as friends, as daughters, as aunties, as all the things, of course, we're invested in our people being happy. We love them. We want them to get what they want in lives, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when you're an HFC, as we call it, it's more than that. We go from, I want you to get what you want, Lori, to I feel responsible for you getting what you want, Lori. I feel responsible for how you feel.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Earn Your Happy podcast. Look, I am so excited to tell you about some huge changes that we have made for you with Glossy. You guys, we just spent a bunch of money on research so that we could really dig deep into all of the ingredients into Glossy so we could really tell you why you should be taking this product. And what happened was even better than we initially imagined when we were formulating. And we set out to create a product that truly improved your skin, improved your health, and improved your gut. And I can tell you that I feel so good about this product, especially after doing all of this extra research. And I just want to tell you one of the things that I think is so freaking amazing about the product. We have ingestible hyaluronic acid. And I'm sure you guys know that hyaluronic acid is an ingredient that so many people tell you to get topically for your skin. And while there are amazing things that happen topically for your skin, hyaluronic acid is something that your body actually naturally creates, but you also want to supplement it if you really want that plump, dewy look in your skin. So some of the research that we got back was these clinical studies that hyaluronic acid has had on it. And there's a clinical study that had 129 females ages 18 to 65 with various skin types. They had oily skin, normal skin, dry skin, and they consumed oral hyaluronic acid. Both test groups observed a significant improvement in skin hydration after 2 to 8 weeks. You guys, that is not long. And that's compared to the placebo. So skin tone was improved after 4 to 8 weeks. Epidermal thickness was increased after 12 weeks. And the dosages of the hyaluronic acid that they had were at 100 milligrams a day. And we have more than that in our product. So you guys, seriously, the wrinkle appearance in another study that contained 40 healthy men and women ages 35 to 64 was a significant improvement after 12 weeks. That's why we say give Glossy 90 days so you can really see the improvement in your skin. You guys know that I do 2 packs a day, sometimes 3. And that's why I think I just feel like I'm observing just a lot more plumpness in my skin, especially in the winter. So you guys can use code HAPPY to get 25% off. And if you don't know, we were literally just able to pass on huge savings to you guys now that we have a large customer base. Because when you have a startup and you're not ordering large quantities, you have to pay for it. So now that we have an incredible customer base, you guys truly have helped us. Instead of driving up the price like everybody else is, we have driven down the price. So we already are taking $20 off for you for your monthly subscription. So it was $79 for this whole last year per month. And now we have been able, because of our incredible partners and customers, get it down to $59 a month on subscription for you. And if you have not started on subscription, you're going to get that 25% off discount savings with code HAPPY right now. So go to getglossy.com right now to start your subscription and give it a good 90 days. I'm telling you, it is a game changer. And you're not going to want to skip any part of this episode today, because if you are in relationships, if you have a family, I'm telling you, this episode freaking blew my mind. I've had Terri Cole on before, but this is my favorite topic. She's a psychotherapist and an author, a relationship and boundary expert. And this podcast is so huge for me because we struggle with, like, I literally struggle with high functioning codependency. I didn't know what the fuck that was before we started talking, but I read her book, or I read part of her book before this because I had just gotten it because it's just coming out. And I was like, holy shit, this is me, you guys. And I think that you are going to completely resonate with this if you are like an overachiever who really just like is deeply emotional, deeply cares about people in your family, like, but maybe not a very healthy point. And I was like, oh damn, like I am being called out. So if you don't think you're codependent because you don't rely on anyone for anything, you're always in control of every situation, and you know how to make sure everyone around you feels good, you might also be a high functioning codependent. For women like us who are incredibly capable, accomplished, and can handle a lot, it can be easy to find ourselves putting everyone else first, which leads to burnout, which was me over the last, 10 years. Terri shares red flags to recognize these patterns, to set healthier boundaries, and stop sacrificing her peace for the sake of others. She also shares how changing our behaviors not only helps you reclaim your personal peace, but actually improves your relationships. So if you're ready to stop the cycle of your burnout, resentment, and even self-sabotage in your career, which you may not even realize you're doing, this episode is going to be the one. Let me tell you, I feel like this is going to be one of the most shared episodes for all of you. It's crazy. So I want to dive right in. And you guys, the book is insane. I'm obsessed with it, and you're going to want to grab it. So let's get started. Terri, welcome back to the Earn Your Happy podcast.
Thanks, Laura. I'm happy to be back.
You guys, this is like our first. I was just asking Terri if this was like her first thing back after the new year that she's doing on her schedule, because it's January 2nd right now, and you're my re-entry into 2025. This is gentle. A dream. Can I start every year with you discussing
Yes, you can.
Life and boundaries and family and codependent relationships? Let's do it. This conversation is going to be so powerful for people because I think people are really ready for it. Like, I think we're all starting to become really aware of the topic, and that there's ways to change, and there's ways to, show up differently no matter what family you comes from. I'm from the Midwest.
Yes.
No matter what family you comes from, that we can really, like, there are some major things that we can do. And I love your messages. Sometimes I just go over to your Instagram to read your quick little messages or see some of your reels, because they're really powerful reminders of how we can take more ownership in our life. So I'm very excited about this next book. You guys, if you're not watching it on video, of course, we have Terri Cole, and it's Too Much. The book is called Too Much. It's a guide to breaking the cycle of high functioning codependency. So this is a really fun one because we're going to dive in and we're going to talk all about this. If people don't know what this topic is, if they don't know exactly what this means, but I love it. I literally can't wait to finish the book. So let's dive into that. Let's start talking about, I think my first question for you, just because I'm so curious about how this relates to your life. I know whenever we're teaching something, whenever we're writing something, Terri, it's because we teach what we need the most. So can you tell me how this topic was inspired and how it relates to your life?
I mean, I was a hardcore codependent and didn't know it, because I'm also such a capable, accomplished, and high functioning person. So I firmly agree that we teach what we most need to learn. And for me, I didn't understand that how I was feeling in my 20s, why I was feeling the way I was. I was feeling frustrated in my relationships. I was feeling put upon. I was feeling taken advantage of. I was feeling underappreciated. And I didn't realize there really was this idea and this thought that it was other people. I really did truly believe, well, if my boss were just different, if my boyfriend had been different, if my friend hadn't betrayed me or whatever the thing was. And of course, a good therapist helped me see that I was the fucking common denominator in all of my experiences. Because I was also, part of what happened is, think about, if you just naturally go, codependency, do I identify as a codependent? My
Mm.
answer would have been, hell no.
Right.
And so what ended up happening is, so I go through my own experience in my 20s, 30s. I've been in therapy since I was 19. I stopped drinking when I was in my early 20s. So this was very much like I'd eyes wide open to the way that I was relating in my relationships once my therapist sort of called this out. So then I become a talent agent, have that whole career. Then I become a psychotherapist. And I'm
Mhm.
attracting into my psychotherapy practice women who resonate with my energy in the world, right? So these are people who are literally building empires. Whatever they are, whatever they're doing, they're really doing it.
Mm.
And I would say, oh, hey, what you're describing, that is definitely a codependent pattern. We should unpack it.
Mhm.
Immediately, there would be a rejection of the notion of being codependent. They'd be like, I'm not dependent on squat, Terri. You know this. Everyone's dependent on me. I'm making all the money. I'm making all the moves. I'm managing all the people and all the things. I'm getting all the shit done. I'm doing all the emotional labor. How could I be codependent? Everyone's dependent on me, which made me realize, Laura, that people didn't know what codependency was and that they were being sort of unduly influenced by Melody Beattie, codependent no more. You got to be, enabling an alcoholic to be a codependent. Like there was almost this negative connotation, like a weakness or like, a long suffering partner sitting at home crying while the person's, spending the rent check on gambling. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that was none of my clients. And that was not
Mhm.
my experience. So let's establish, I realized now, I can't, obviously, it was a problem for me as the therapist because how could I help them if they didn't see themselves in the problem?
Yep.
And it really got me thinking about there's a different flavor of codependency for modern women. And I knew it so well because it was my own flavor. It was what I had experienced in my life. So let's establish what I say is high functioning codependency, which is you being overly invested in the feeling states, the outcomes, the circumstances, the finances, the situations, the careers of the people in your life to the detriment of your own internal peace. So, what does that mean? It means as women, as empaths, as lovers, as friends, as daughters, as aunties, as all the things, of course, we're invested in our people being happy. We love them. We want them to get what they want in
Mhm.
lives. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when you're an HFC, as we call it, it's more than that. We go from, I want you to get what you want, Lori, to I feel responsible for you getting what you want, Lori. I feel responsible for how you feel. Right.
Mhm.
If we were going to say at its core, at the foundation of any kind of codependency is an overt or a covert desire, bid, attempt to control other people's outcomes. I don't want you to be sad. So I'm going to give auto advice. I'm going to make a lot of suggestions about the situation you're in that's going to help you because I was in a similar situation, right? What is that doing? I don't like the way you're feeling.
Mm.
I want to change the way you're feeling. So I'm going to give you some things that are going to help change the way that you're feeling. The thing that people don't understand is the control aspect. People are always like, to me, asking the question, I'm always confused. Am I being caring or am I being codependent? And I'm like, the
Mhm.
real question is, am I being caring or am I being controlling?
Mm.
Because that's really what codependency is. We do not want our friend to marry the stupid idiot. We do not want our partner to get fired from their job. And listen, any normal people wouldn't want those things. But when you're a high functioning codependent and when you're so capable, because part of the problem is that the people in my therapy practice and the women in particular that I wrote this book for, and the people in my life, because I got to say, HFCs, we travel in packs,
Yep.
we are highly functioning. Nobody is walking around and being like, I hope Lori's okay. They're like,
Yep.
she's fucking fine. You know why?
Mhm.
Because she's always fine. Nobody's wondering if Terry's okay. You know why? Obviously, I'm okay because we can function at this high level. So
Mhm.
nobody's looking behind the curtain. Nobody knows how we feel inside. Nobody understands the level of exhaustion, burnout. This is what I've seen in my therapy practice:
Mm.
frustration, feeling unappreciated, feeling taken advantage of, getting to the point of burnout where everything on your list, even the things you used to love to do, become checking a box because we're so productivity focused as well. So the high functioning aspect of it makes it lonely. There can be like an existential loneliness in being a high functioning codependent because and I think maybe it'll be helpful, and you tell me, Laura, but I feel like it'll be helpful if we could say, what are the traits of being a high functioning codependent, so people listening or watching can go, okay, yes, I identify with that, that's me. And then we'll get into some fixes. So the first thing I would say is feeling responsible for fixing other people's problems, right? You got to think about it. When your friend calls you and is in a crisis, how quickly is that crisis literally yours? Like it's not just you being like, I feel bad. I feel compassion for my friend. You're like, I'm Googling things. I'm sending a book. I'm calling an oncologist. Like I'm doing things to fix this problem. Another trait is just going above and beyond. A lot of times when we're not asked to, we like see a need and we just want to fill that need. So we're automatically doing it. Always ready to jump into damage control mode. So one thing that's amazing, and you guys, trust me, you get into recovery because that's all we can hope for when you're a high functioning codependent. We just want to get into recovery from this. But all of the qualities that make you so amazing, there'll just be more of them. And what we do when we're in recovery is that we are starting to do less of the dysfunctional behaviors that make us pissed, that make us bitter, that make us low key, like aggravated, just waiting for someone to cut us off in traffic or just waiting for like we're so efficient. We can't stop seeing the way the world is so inefficient. And it can be exhausting and frustrating. But what I'm saying is don't worry about getting into recovery, because the reality is you don't become a different person. It's just like me being in recovery for alcohol. I just have a different behavior. Do I never want to drink? No, I would like to drink right now. I just don't, right? I just
Yeah.
choose not to, right? It's 5 o'clock somewhere was my motto back in the day. you know, um, another trait is kind of getting frustrated when people don't take our advice, because we can be very generous when people have problems. We'll spend a lot of time talking to them, and then they don't do it and we're kind of pissed. So another residual effect of these behaviors, if we do them consistently, is feeling resentful, feeling kind of bitter, feeling exhausted. So if we were to say what the behaviors themselves, like what do they look like in real life? On auto advice giving is one of the top ones, where I didn't even save it for the people I knew. Like I'd auto advice give a friggin' stewardess, like anyone. I could barely
Yeah.
know you and be like, oh, I overheard that you're looking for a new car and I wanted to, like, just mind your own business. I couldn't even let my friends drive the way that, they'd be leaving when I was living in LA, and I'd be like, don't take the 405. Like, just mind your own fucking business. They also have
Yeah.
ways. But in those ways, I couldn't stop thinking about what could go wrong, not wanting my friend to have that bad experience. Being overly self-sacrificing is another behavior where when you are a high functioning codependent in HFC, we're like always willing to take one for the team. It always seems like someone else needs something else. Imagine that you and your partner, you both imagine back in the day when people would drive to work. He's leaving first and there's a flat tire. You'd immediately just yell out the door, take the other car, I'll Uber. Like constantly problem solving, on the go, no problem. Auto accommodating. So this, you see yourself out in the world. I mean, I tell a story in the book about I was at my hair salon in New York City, and they had like put a mask on my hair. So I was laying in the sink, but not doing anything. So it was going to be in there for like 20 minutes or whatever. And all of a sudden there's a line started forming for the sinks. And every person with their little robe that got online, I was more and more stressed out, being like, I'm just laying here. Like, I don't even
I
need a sink.
feel this right now.
I should move. So I raised my hand to get the assistant to come over. And I'm like, I could sit somewhere else. And she's like, you're good, lady, whatever. We do this every Saturday to relax, But why does that even matter? Because let's look at just in that one scenario, what is the cost? I'm laying there on a Saturday. I could have been meditating. I could have been listening to a podcast, learning something. I could have called my fucking mother. Like there's a million things that would have poured into my cup that I could have done, but I didn't do any of those. I was too busy worrying about some shit that was not my side of the street, trying to taking responsibility for something that was not my responsibility. And it's very bad for your nervous system to do that, right? There's a hypervigilance that goes along with being a high functioning codependent, where we are so dialed into our environment, the people around us, what's happening around us. And then there's one step further of behavior where there's this thing called I just called it anticipatory planning, right? Because I was going, all right, what are the behaviors that people do where you know you're going to maybe be with someone who's a little bit difficult and you're like making a plan to make sure, well, I know that Uncle Bob doesn't like Uncle Jimmy. Make sure they don't sit near each other. I'll get the booze that they both like to drink. It's like being a puppet master rather than expecting the grown adults in your life. And of course, that's from a personal experience. Like Christmas after Christmas of dealing with these two fucking uncles who didn't like each other and there could be like a fight or an argument could break out. Instead of just being like, if you two idiots can't figure it out, then one of you can't come. So figure that out between you. Instead, it's like, I would think that I could control it by this anticipatory planning. And then you have the regular behaviors of overfunctioning, right? Which can inspire underfunctioning in other people. So I used to say, like I could take a perfectly functional boyfriend in my 20s and literally turn that guy into an underfunctioner in 2 weeks or less. Just, right? Do you know what I mean when I say that?
I do.
Yeah. Just being
Start
like, I
taking
got
on
it.
normal everyday things of theirs.
Yes,
should be
I got
theirs,
it. I got it. I got it. Right. When you think about what would be the mantra for a high functioning codependent is I got it, is it has to be me, because other traits is that we don't trust other people to do it or to do it right. We don't want to be a burden. We don't like to be vulnerable. Are you good at asking for help?
Am I good at asking for help? I have been working on this now
Okay.
for a solid 2 years. So I've gotten really good, but before this,
Great.
never. Yeah.
Yes, never. That's very
Yeah.
HFC to just be like, I just don't want to burden. Another thing for me, certainly personally, is I didn't want to owe anybody, which is so
Totally.
weird. But why? Like when you really think about it, you're like, why? I'm so generous. Why would do I feel like people owe me? And if I do, then I'm doing things for the wrong reasons, right? We have to look at the motivation. So anyway, those are some of the behaviors, some of the traits that we have, but the costs are great. So do you want to tell me where you want to go from here?
The start of a new year is the perfect time to get organized. And if you guys didn't know, I choose a word every single new year. And my word this year is actually organized. So it's huge to set goals and prioritize what really matters most. And for me, this year, it is organization, systems, and streamlining. And so it's a top priority for everything that I'm about to tell you and my financial wellness, which feels more important than ever. And thanks to Rocket Money, my goals feel super achievable and they show me all of my subscriptions of everything that I have right in one place. And it helps me easily cancel ones that I forgot I've been paying for. I know that you guys are probably doing this right now on your phone. Rocket Money pulls all together, all of my spending across all of my different accounts so I can clearly track my spending habits and see where I can cut back. And Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions. It monitors your spending and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. You can see all of your subscriptions in one place and know exactly where your money is going. So for ones you don't want anymore, Rocket Money can help you cancel them. Rocket Money's dashboard gives you a clear view of your expenses across all accounts. You can easily create a personalized budget with custom categories to help keep your spending on track. See your monthly spending trends in each category to know exactly where your money's going. Get alerts if bills increase in price and there's unusual spending activity, or if you're close to going over your budget. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/EYH today. That's rocketmoney.com/EYH. rocketmoney.com/EYH. I am so excited to share this next podcast sponsor with you because I am not even kidding you. Chris and I were just on a walk last month and we were talking about how we want to get separate phone lines for our business phones because we feel like we're missing things in our business, and we also want to set boundaries with the time frame that we are answering messages, and we want to really have that line between personal and business hours as well. And you guys know that running a small business means that you're wearing all of the hats, and your personal phone literally becomes your business phone, and before you know it, you're juggling customers all day long, all night long. And if you coach people, especially, or you text people on your phone, this is really where it starts to feel like it becomes impossible to manage with your personal number. And that's where Open Phone comes in. Open Phone is the #1 business phone system. They'll help you separate your personal life from your growing business. So for just $15 a month, the cost of a few coffees, maybe 2 coffees for me, you get complete transparency and visibility into everything happening with your business phone number. So Open Phone works through an app on your phone or computer and integrates with HubSpot and hundreds of other systems. They use AI-powered call transcripts and summaries, so you'll have a summary of your phone call with action items as soon as you hang up. And if you miss a call, automated messages are sent directly to your customer, meaning you'll never miss an opportunity to engage with them. So they also have won multiple awards by G2 for software reviews and are trusted by over 50,000 businesses. So right now, OpenPhone is offering 20% off your first 6 months when you go to openphone.com/earn. That's OpenPhone, OpenPhone.com/earn for 20% off for 6 months. Openphone.com/earn. And if you have existing numbers with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge.
Okay, so a couple of the things as I was listening to that, because number one, fully identifying with all of them while I'm also thinking of all of the people in my life, because we do run in packs, and I'm like, oh my gosh,
Yes, we do.
I have to get this book for everyone, or just send them this podcast. So the question that came up for me is, you're talking about your personality trait not changing when you start to change these different things. One of the things that I'm struggling with still is figuring out when it still actually feels good and when it's like just a default response from myself. So because some of these things are nice to do, and I do find myself with family, though, slipping into things over and over, but they don't feel as bad as they did anymore. And sometimes they feel good. So I'm kind of trying to differentiate, and maybe people listening are trying to sort that out too.
Yeah. I think that one of the easiest and fastest ways to make that distinction that you're talking about, Laura, is to do a resentment inventory, right? Really think about how you feel in the relationships in your life. Are you holding on to resentment? Because so much of the time, if we are, it means we're overgiving or overfunctioning, or a boundary needs to be put in place, or we need to have a hard conversation, or we need to tell the truth, or we need to set a limit, or we need to say no. But all of those things, if we're on autopilot, we're not really checking in with, how do I feel about this actual thing? So 2 things that you guys listening can take right now. Before you say yes to anything, you're going to ask these 2 questions. 1, do I have the bandwidth to do this without becoming resentful? That's question number 1 before you agree to anything in 2025 and beyond. Question number 2, do I even effing want to do it?
Oh, that's good.
Because as HFCs, so much of the time, if someone else wants us to, it makes us feel like either we should, or it makes us kind of want to because they want us to. And that's okay. But we really have to ask ourselves those 2 pertinent questions before we agree, because the thing is, it is bad for our relationships if we stay in this state of resentment. not good for our relationships because it's cumulative. Resentment is cumulative. And it becomes more and more obvious that you're resentful the longer you're not handling it or managing it or changing it, or the longer you are self-abandoning in your mind in service, quote unquote, of your relationship, because that shit doesn't serve anybody. If you are self-abandoning, and that's different, Laura, than compromising, right? And I think the distinctions are important because being in a partnership, as you are, as I am for almost 30 years, it's like, obviously, we're going to compromise or we're not going to be in long-term relationships, right? Obviously, if
Right.
you're a part of a society or you have friends or you have family. So I'm not talking about compromising. I'm talking about self-abandonment is what we want to avoid, which means if I say yes to this, am I saying no to something that I really need for myself? Am I saying no to filling up my own cup? Because we're the only ones who can do that. But a lot of times we will overgive to other people and then sort of expect that in return, and we may not get it. And I make the distinction in the book. You know how self-care, everyone talks about self-care and self-love, and it's just, I just feel like it's so convoluted at this point. It's confusing. You're like, what does it even mean? I
Yep.
put it all under the umbrella of self-consideration because that's what it actually is. I will consider myself first. And it doesn't mean I won't compromise. It doesn't mean I will not still sometimes do things I don't necessarily want to do, but I will, if I'm choosing them mindfully, if I'm doing something that my husband wants to do that maybe it's not my favorite thing to do, but he is actually my favorite. And if he wants to do it and it's going to make him happy, I, with a glad heart, can do it, even if it's shit I don't like, but I really like him. Do you know what I mean? So we're making,
Million percent.
right. So we're making these mindful choices. That's different than making these decisions on autopilot. So part of this process that I walk you through in the book is raising your awareness about your own behaviors. How are you interacting in your relationships right now? How do you feel in your life? Because what I've seen over the literally almost, I mean, I've been a therapist for almost 28 years. Like, what is the cost of doing this? Because I've seen it in young women, and then I've seen it in women who've done it for decades. And one thing that I see a lot is burnout. You're just fucking exhausted.
Exhausted. Yes.
Exhausted. And what happens is there's this cycle that I've seen. It's in the beginning when you're an HFC, we have too many fucks to give to too many people, right? For a long time. For a long time, because we're also like the Energizer bunnies where we're just like, it's okay. I got it. I can do it. I got it. I got it. And then sooner or later, that cumulative impact of resentment, the pendulum will swing all the way to the other side where you're just either, so what I've seen is either you just end up having a psychological and emotional crisis where you're like, I don't give a fuck about anybody. Like I don't, none, there's none left to give. It's funny. I was talking to a woman the other day. She was interviewing me for something and she was saying how she read the book, which inspired her. This was for Thanksgiving. She and her husband had family out east. She's such an HFC. She was so exhausted. But by the time the kids, whatever, his family, they already had a hotel booked. She literally said, hey, I am not going east for Thanksgiving. And he's like, all right, babe, we'll do it's okay. I don't even care if we lose the money. We'll just stay here. She's like, no, you're actually not invited to stay with me. I literally need to be on my couch ordering pizza every day for a fucking week by myself. Like that's what I need. And he's like, okay, not mad. I said, how was he really? She said, actually, he said, are you sure? Is this what will this be good for you? And she said, I'm positive. And he was like, amazing, babe, no problem. I got the kids. Let's go. So they left.
Wow.
That is someone now. She did it very productively. And she had a partner who didn't take it personally because she's like, because it wasn't about him. It was about her. Now, that is the pendulum swinging though, right? We're hoping, I'm walking you through the book so that hopefully we can make changes enough so that if you didn't want to go out east for Thanksgiving, you would in July not make that plan. You would already know. I don't want to do it. Or you would already in July tell your partner, hey, you and the kids can do that. I'd like to stay home, or whatever the thing is. But that's the cycle. So
Mhm.
wherever you are, if you're listening and you feel like either you're way over here, meaning giving too many F's to too many people, or you're way over here and you're just so bitter at everyone, because this is where we end up if there's no intervention, is we're just so mad about all
Mhm.
the things that we've done that feel unreciprocated or that feel unappreciated. And herein lies the rub with that, is that if I'm doing it to control things, I'm not doing it, right? If I'm giving to control things, right? I take a hit for the team. Don't worry about it. You guys go. I'll stay home with the sick kid, or I'll stay home, whatever. If I'm doing that to avoid conflict, because this is one of the major things with being a high functioning codependent, we might be high functioning, but we're not necessarily high conflict. We would
Mhm.
like to not have that conflict. We are always hypervigilantly thinking ahead to not have that conflict. But sooner or later, you end up feeling mad. And even when people are appreciative, because we're coming from a messed up place in doing it, nobody can ever be grateful enough, because that
Mhm.
has to be an inside job. We have to do what's right for ourselves. We can't like delegate that, or we can't farm that out. Right. So,
Mhm.
anyway, what ends up happening for people is you're living what I call life light, like LITE, because
Mm.
you're so 50% of life, we're in our head, thinking about other people, thinking about what people need and is it going to be okay? And like, think about how much you personally, Laura, about the
Mhm.
people in your life.
Mhm.
Who doesn't eat gluten? Who had a
Mhm.
terrible breakup? Who hasn't watched Ted Lasso? Who doesn't like, you know what I mean? Who can't stand small talk? Who doesn't like warm weather? Each one of us has a stadium of data in our
Mm.
mind about the people in our life. And yet, most of us, if you're an HFC, don't have the same expectation that others will know all of those things about us, because we barely even prioritize those things. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So,
I
anyway,
do know.
we're not fully present. And it just doesn't, life is just about half as juicy as it should be, because it's
Mhm.
exhausting. Burnout,
Mm.
health problems, bitterness, and just not fully self expressed. So you're not known in your
Mhm.
relationships because you're too busy with your attention outward.
Mhm. I would say, as you're talking, one of the things that I really felt in the past, which I can tell you, I don't feel recovered. I feel fully aware. So now I feel very I'll just say where I am now. I'm very happy in my life. I'm extremely happy in my relationships. I still can default to this for sure. But
Mhm.
the thing that I noticed before I really understood this concept and started working on it was I thought that I was somebody who just didn't like people. And I thought there was something
Mhm.
wrong with me. I was like, I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't really get a lot of joy from people. Like, I had my
Yep.
husband and he was my best friend. And I'm sure we had our own little weird codependent system going on. We did for sure. But,
Sure. Same.
but I think both of us really were like, do people just suck? And, so I kind of want to talk about how I can go from thinking that everyone
Mhm.
sucks and not really having good girlfriends to
Mhm.
truly being like, I'm such a girl's girl. I go on girls' trips now all the time. I do girls'
Mhm.
masterminds. Like,
Yeah.
I'm so fulfilled. All I want to do now is be around friends. And it's truly
Mhm.
because I have stopped trying to control people, fix
Yes.
them, worrying
Yep.
about them like they cannot like me. Don't get
Yep.
me wrong, I still feel all the emotions, but
Yep.
everything that you just said, this is such a process, but that's totally changed. Have you found that with people that they can like everyone changes in their life all of a sudden?
Oh, yeah. Because the thing is, as Wayne Dyer said many decades ago, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
Mhm.
So what happens is people didn't change. You changed, right? In my
Mhm.
life, people didn't change. I changed. And then my relationships changed. And then how I felt changed. So I think part of it is understanding what is on my side of the street and what is not
Mhm.
on my side of the street. What am I responsible for? What am I not responsible for? So let's look at some solutions, like how people can move away from being HFCs to being more interdependent in their
Mhm.
relationships, because that's really what we're looking for. Part of it is, instead of the auto advice giving piece, I mean, listen, you're already raising your awareness by listening to this podcast. Go get the book. Like, you're raising your awareness that there's some behaviors you would like to change. That's step number one. But being really aware, if you only changed one thing and this was it, it would change your life. Instead of
Mm.
auto advice giving, you learn to ask expansive questions.
Mm.
So your friend comes to you, she's in a crisis. Before you say a word of what you think maybe she should do, you say, all right, babe, let's start with, what do you think you should do?
Mm.
And then just shut up. If she says, I don't know, say, okay. If you did know, what do you think? What does your gut say?
Mm.
Let's talk about it. How does it feel that you're experiencing this? Like, and I say to people, because here's the thing, what you think is way more important than what I think, because it's your life. But I'm here. You want to brainstorm? I'm here. And listen, if you've set yourself up, and I have, of course, I've been a therapist for so long. Obviously, I've set myself up as someone that people ask my opinion on things, but it's never the first stop on the bus now for me. And even with children, right? A kid goes to school, they're 7 years old. They have a problem at
Mm.
school. They come back. I had a fight with Billy today. Instead of being like, we don't fight in this family, you go, tell me what happened. Let him tell
Mm.
you. Then you say, okay, what do you think you should do now? And
Mm.
stop talking. So, because what ends up happening, Laura, and I think we talked about this the last time I was on here. I think, did we talk about what happened with my sister the last time we were here? I
Don't
know it's one of the
remember, but
main
refresh
stories.
us.
I won't. I could do it quick, but it's one of the main stories in the book, because it's literally where this concept of high functioning
Mm.
codependency actually came from, was my experience with one of my sisters. So I'm the youngest of
Mm.
four sisters, and one of my older sisters had a history of bad relationships. She was an alcoholic. She was involved with a guy who was doing drugs. They were literally living in a shack in the woods with no running water and no electricity, and he was abusive. So that's just an HFC's
Wow.
nightmare, right?
Yes,
Right.
that's your worry
So
every day. Mm-hmm.
of course, and wanting to control. I mean, I couldn't do anything. I mean, I had so much going on in my life, but the only thing I could think about was like, got to get her out of there. Just got to do
Yep.
it. So with I remember going to my therapist. I'd been talking about it for weeks. I was bawling my eyes out, crying. What am I? And I remember saying, Bev, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And she said, Terri, let me ask you something. What makes you think you know what lessons your sister needs to learn in this life and how she needs to learn them?
Mm. That's so good.
And I was like, listen, I think we could both agree it doesn't have to be with this piece of shit in the woods
Right.
with no fucking running water, you know? And she was like, I would love to, but I can't agree because I'm not God
Mm.
and
Mm.
neither are you.
Mm.
So do you know what's happening for you? I was like, obviously not. So fill me in. And she said, listen, you've worked so hard to create this harmonious life for yourself through lots of
Mhm.
therapy. Your sister's dumpster fire of a life is like fucking with your peace, basically. And you just
Mhm.
would like to fix it so your pain will end.
Mm.
I was like, she is not wrong.
Yeah. Yep.
That's a fact. I want it to be fixed so I can go back to my happy freaking life. I just got married. Like, I was a bonus mom for the first time for three teenage kids. Like, I was
Mm.
busy. I had shit going on.
Mhm.
But the realization and what she helped me do, she was like, you need to have boundaries. You don't need to talk to her about this abusive guy every day. Like, have boundaries. So anyway, I had a hard conversation with my sister, basically saying, hey, I love you and I cannot talk about this. If and when you ever want to get out, though, I'll always be your person. Call me. So within
Mhm.
9 months, we probably only talked like 2 or 3 times in that period of time. But then she finally called and said, hey, I'm ready. Are you still my person? I was like, fucking yes, I am. Jumped in my car, went and picked her up. And the most important aspect of this story is that instead of her baby sister being the hero of her story, she gets to be the hero of her own story. She got
Mhm.
sober. She went back to school. She's never been, that was decades ago. She's never been in another abusive relationship. Like long term sobriety, all of those things are hers, not
Mm.
mine. And when you're in HFC, what you don't realize you're doing is you're inserting yourself, you're centering yourself as the solution to other people's problems. And that was so painful for me to
Mm.
really realize, because honestly, it's not that I thought I was Mother Teresa. It's just that I really thought that I was doing it all from love, right?
Mhm.
And what I really got was a lot of it was control.
Mhm.
I wanted her to get her shit together so I could get on with my happy life. Please,
Mhm.
you're really interrupting my happy life, you know?
That's the part right there that like I'm thinking about an instance in my life right now where it's like there's I think for a lot of people if they have this and have experienced what you just said,
Mhm.
there's a lot of anger there like you are fucking up my life. Like
Yes.
like I'm very angry with this particular person because
Yeah.
this very selfish action it's hard for me to pull away from it because it does really affect our family and our life. So,
Hmm. Yeah.
how do you
And,
deal with that resentment? But also, it's kind of like I want to be there for them and make sure they have the therapy or whatever they need, but also stay out of it, you know?
but boundaries, right? So if we're
Yeah.
looking at what are the fixes, what do we have to do to get into recovery from HFC? Raise your awareness. Second thing is boundaries. And
Mm.
so they need to make sure they're in therapy, not you. I mean, unless they're a
Mm.
minor, which it doesn't sound like they
No.
are. So
Mm-mm.
already that's not your side of the street, right?
Mm.
They need to, because here's the thing. What my therapist also explained to me with that thing with my sister, she's like, Terri, every intervention that you do, every bit of money that you're throwing at that, every book you send, you're probably getting in the way of your sister reaching the bottom that she needs
Mm.
to reach to make a change. Like you're literally prolonging this hell, right? Like by
Mhm.
inserting yourself and being like, I can help make it better, but it doesn't. It just keeps it going. So
Mm.
that was a real awakening. And I think that we have to also take responsibility for what we're doing. If that person is choosing, whether it's like I felt like with my sister, listen, she's an addict, so am I. I'm in recovery, right? Like, so I knew I didn't feel like she was choosing it like willy nilly, but I also knew that she was the only one who could change it.
Mhm.
You can't get into recovery for people. You can't do the work, right? So you can't go to the gym for
Yeah.
someone so they don't have diabetes. Like, right? We can't do that. And I think that really moving into surrendering to what is can be very difficult for a high functioning codependent.
Mhm.
And yet it is absolutely key to maintaining our own peace and
Mm.
realizing you don't know what everyone should be doing.
Mhm.
Remember what Bev said. What makes you think you know what lessons that person needs to learn and how they need to learn them in this lifetime? Nobody could have told me. I learned everything the hard way on my own because that's the only way I could have
Mhm.
done it, right? Someone could have been like, you should do whatever it is. I needed to do it my own way. So and I would resent someone being like, I know what you should do. Really? You do
Mhm.
not know what I should do. What makes you think, right? It's like presumptuous of me to think that I knew. And not just with my sister, but with every freaking person in my life. I thought I knew what everyone should be doing. Just
Yeah.
spending life, yum yucking, I talk about in the book, where we're just like approving and disapproving endlessly all day long about everything, from whether that
Mm.
skirt goes with those boots or whether I think their long term relationship is going to work. Like, oh my God, stop judging. It's so
Yeah.
exhausting.
Exhausting. It's tough for the high functioners because we have the resources and we can typically know how to come up with money if money's an issue. If a,
Yep.
oh, you don't have access to this person, let me try to get access to this person.
Yep.
When does that start to like, it's kind of like at what point do you offer that help? But then the guilt that can come when you're somebody who has more than others because you're so capable.
Yep.
Can we talk about how you deal with the guilt associated and the
Hmm.
selfish feeling of, well, I know how to do this and they don't?
Yep. But again, what makes that's not your side of the street?
True.
Even though they don't, right? It's
Mhm.
like, how will they learn? And just like with kids, When parents are like, I don't know why they don't know anything. You're like, because you never let them learn anything. That's why. Because you were so
Mm.
afraid for them to have one negative thought, one negative feeling, that you are jumping in and going to the principal or talking to the teacher or talking to that kid's parents. Like, never teaching kids how to actually work shit out on their own is
Mm.
not helpful. And that's the parent's fear. And that's what the parent is doing. I feel like feeling guilty, like you need to look at your own relationship to your abundance, right?
Mm.
One of my friends is an energy work expert type person. Her name is Lara Riggio, and she always does this thing. She does muscle testing in groups, and she
Mhm.
has you say, it's okay for me to have more money than my friends, my family, and the poor.
Mm.
And most
Wow.
people go weak, right? When you're muscle testing that. And the thing is, it actually is okay for you to have more money than your friends, your family, and the poor. You can choose to set up a trust fund. You can choose to do a nonprofit. You can choose, like, there's lots of
Mm.
things. I can choose to help my sister's kids go to college. Like, there's many
Mm.
ways, many things we can do with our money if you have it. But I think that just the guilt that can be associated and the feeling like, I don't want that person to suffer, but I want you to look at that person's suffering as their growth path.
Mhm.
Right. And when you start switching your combo, Lori, and maybe you already have, but when you start switching to what do you think you should do,
Mm.
you're going to have a lot less guilt because you're going to be in much more rich conversations with people because
Mm.
you are now going to give them the most expensive coin you can ever spend, which is your time and attention, rather than like trying to check a box. And like I was trying to do with my sister, like, oh, I just need to get this thing fixed, being able to say, what do you think you should do? And listen, expansive conversations. Give someone the floor and actually give them the floor. And is there
Mhm.
more? Is there something else you want to say about that? Then what do you think
Mhm.
would happen? Like we can become really great conversationalists when we move from thinking, even if it's unconscious, that we're responsible for what happens. Because what we're
Mm.
doing is projecting what we would want in life onto that person, thinking we know what they
Mhm.
need. And we really don't. We really
Mhm.
don't. So, how do you deal with the guilt? Was your question.
Mhm.
And I think that I would ask you to not run away from it. I would ask you to journal about it and say why.
Mm.
We all make choices in this life. You got gifts and you got deficiencies. I got gifts and I got deficiencies, right? It's like whoever you're talking about, they got gifts and they got deficiencies.
Mhm.
And it's like their path to get on or to be on. And again, I'm not saying like my husband and I helped my sister after, right? We had this little shabby little lake house thing, like in upstate New York. It's like a camp, they call it, not
Mhm.
nothing, not fancy, but we winterized it quick and just let her live there free for 2 years and paid all the bills just so she could, get her on her feet, get a job, make some money. That's appropriate. I knew I could do that without being resentful because I
Mm.
knew if she was safe, it wouldn't be obsessing my mind, right? I knew that just give her space to do what she needed to do.
Yeah.
And I asked her, how can I best support you, right? Just ask your people what you can do, if anything, because part of it is, again, we take over. A lot of times being an HFC, we're just people who are in charge. We're just in control of things in life. And we're
Mm.
sort of like, just get it done because that's the way we function. And yet,
Mm.
when we're getting it done for someone else, we're on the wrong side of the street and we need to back up. So, anytime you think, here's another clue that could be helpful. Anytime in your mind you say, well, I don't want them to think
Mm.
whatever it is, or I don't want them to feel whatever it is, then I want you to back your hiney up onto your own side of the street because what they think and feel is their side of the street. What you think and feel is yours. So you have to surrender to what is and realize that, Cheryl Richardson wrote a book called Let Me Disappoint You. And
Mm.
we really need to learn that sometimes in healthy relationships, we're going to disappoint people. Because if
Mhm.
not, we will be self abandoning. And any relationship that is built on your regular self abandonment is not a healthy relationship. You will only end up resentful. You will only end up somehow having a rupture in that relationship because we can only do that for so long.
Mm. Do you think it's ever appropriate to have this conversation with some people? Like I'm going to show up differently because here's what I've been attaching into. Here's what I've been spiraling out with you. What is that useful, or is it better to just kind of start minding your own business?
It's funny. I think it depends on the situation, but as
Mhm.
HFCs, we really want to kind of grab the bullhorn and make an announcement because we would like to manage all the expectations immediately.
Yes, I would.
We just want everyone to know
The
there's a
fallout. I'm
new.
managing the fallout.
Exactly. So
Mhm.
my feeling is I don't think it's that helpful because the thing is, when you change your behavior, when you just, even if you just start with, and I'm curious to know, you have to text me, you have to let me know,
Okay.
because I know you've already been on this path, but really consciously, not auto advice giving, really consciously asking people what they think they should do and being supportive of them in that way. I'd be curious to see how your relationships change because here's the thing, people won't even, they might in the beginning resist, right? Because we're changing the dance, as Harriet Lerner talks about, like relationships are a dance. And so you're doing a different move and they're going to kind of be like, hello, normally I come to you and then you tell me what to do. Why are you not doing that? So,
Mm.
you have to sort of stand your ground in not doing the old dance. And if they say,
Mhm.
well, why won't you tell me what you think? And you could say, because I realized that the truth is that what you think about what you should do is just infinitely more important than what I think. Because it's not about getting it
Mm.
right. It's about getting it right for you.
Mhm.
And only you can do that.
Mm.
Like, so I feel like it's okay to talk about it if someone pushes back and goes, I don't get this. And even if they say, I don't know, I love saying to people, how can I best support you right now? You want to watch a movie? You want to talk? You want to not? You want to shop? Do you
Mm.
want to go have a cup of tea? Like this creates this expansion for people to let us know what makes them feel loved or what makes them feel supported.
Mhm.
And I think that there's also something that it's funny. I had no idea that Mel was writing a whole book on the let them thing. Right.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
actually didn't know it, but she had talked about it like, I don't know, 3 years ago, maybe. And I included it in this book, just saying, just her quote about let them, because I had my own
Mhm.
sort of version of it, different, but similar, but I just credited her to it. And how I look at it from an HFC standpoint is that when someone is doing something that I kind of want to be like, oh, there's a better way to do that, or
Mhm.
there's a different way I think you should do that, I say in my mind, let them
Mhm.
fucking, and for me, I used to always say, let them live, right? Just
Mm.
fucking let them live. If it's a mistake, it's their mistake to make. And I always point to this thing. My mother, it's funny that I came all full circle around to writing this book with these concepts is my mother had this quote on her refrigerator always from Irma Bombeck, probably from God 1972, that said, I promise not to take credit for your accomplishments if you promise not to blame me for your failures.
Mm. That's really good.
Right? Which is
Mhm.
basically the parent's version of not being a high functioning codependent.
Wow.
And that planted seeds so long ago. I mean, I remember seeing it in high school, I think, where I was like, what does that mean? I remember asking her and her saying exactly that. Terri, your life is your life and I'm here to support you, but your decisions are your own. And I was like,
Mm.
wow, how you doing? I'm 19. Are you sure?
You're like, do they have to be?
I know.
Just want to give them to you.
Hey, please.
Oh my gosh. What do you think in conclusion of all of this? Because we could
Mhm.
talk about there's so many layers. We could talk about family, relationships, siblings.
Yep.
I mean, on and on and on.
Which I do
What do
cover
you
in the book, all those things.
everything, which I love. You
Mhm.
guys, this book is so in depth of I have found every single scenario in my life. You've given it an answer in this book. So
Mhm.
I promise you there's not a problem that you're having that is not seen and discussed and given a tool in this book. So, and I love it.
Yes.
It's so great. It's very, even though it's complex, it's very simple to understand.
Yes, it is.
And your different situations and scenarios that you describe as well. But let's give people some just ideas of what comes out of doing a little bit of this work.
Oh, so much more expansion,
Mm.
joy, abundance, but such a deepening. The real thing is a deepening in relationships where
A
the
million percent.
intimacy, right? Because now you're really starting to not just know the people in your life differently, you're allowing them to know you
Mhm.
differently. When you're not overfunctioning so much, when you actually make the simple request about what you need, when you actually allow people to help you, either even ask for help, it's like you're seen and loved and celebrated in
Mhm.
this different way. And the people in your life, what you're going to find too, is that you will have so many people in your life who are like, this is so amazing to like know you in this way, in a real way. And then you're going to have some people that when you change the dance, they're not that into the new you.
Yep.
And that's okay. We can sort of step back. This is where boundaries come in, where it doesn't mean, oh, we should cut off from all those people. No, it just
Mhm.
means we need to have that VIP section, like,
Mhm.
and make decisions about who gets to be really close to your most tender heart.
Mm.
And it's got to be people who are emotionally trustworthy,
Mhm.
because not everyone deserves to be in that VIP section.
No. And, if people are like, oh God, I hate that confrontation of like people leaving or what that looks like.
Hmm.
I will say that what happens on the flip side with the positive relationships, it's like
Mm,
the contrast is so extreme of how beautiful it is that it actually hurts
yes.
less because once you realize how good it can get, those other ones, you just don't really want them in your life. And those people are,
And yes,
they're now
you're not.
so much more supportive and loving that you almost start to not really care because you have these other people in your corner and you're not going to lose them because they see you, they know you, it's people that won't leave. And Terry, I feel like for the first time in the last, I told my husband my 30s were just like kind of just all this, your whole book,
Hmm.
figuring that out. And
Yes.
I feel like 40 was the first time I really started to like show up to my life. Like I understood what life was about in relationships. And
Hmm.
it's from this, like what your book is teaching. So,
It's so beautiful. And there is so much for you on the other side of getting into recovery from
mm,
this. And the last thing I want to say about it, two things, is that you deserve it. What an incredible gift, an honor, and a privilege that we get to be alive on this earth at this moment in time,
mhm,
even with all the strife that's going on. Like it's a gift that you're here and to be fully present. You cannot be living with codependent relationships in this way. And
mhm,
you deserve to have all the adventure and all the expansion and all the joy, and you deserve to be known. And the thing is, if you don't get into recovery, then you're never going to contribute. Because one last thing I will say that I've seen over and over again in 30 years as a therapist is that this behavior creates a glass ceiling of
mm,
our own making when it comes to business success, entrepreneurial success, relationship success, because you can't do both. We can't serve the people pleasing vibe and also be who we actually are because we're not that. That's about manipulation and control and making sure ever appeasing people. So this is different, right? And you
mm,
can't do both. So it's really like the quality of your life depends on it. And I wanted to give you guys a gift to make it easy. Besides the book, that is my gift to you too. But I created just a little HFC toolkit because I know it can be overwhelming when you
mhm.
start this process and you're like, well, where do I even start? You can go to terricole.com/HFC to get it. And there'll be a link to
Mm.
purchase the book there as well.
Amazing. And you guys, we're going to link that up in the show notes too. So you can just go down there, which I love because those are quick things. The gift is a quick thing that you can go and do and learn from right away, which always feels good to
Yes,
our little dopamine receptors.
indeed. I love it.
Exactly. We get to learn fast, but truly like such a gift. So much work has gone into this book. Like
Yes.
so much work. I'm so grateful that you wrote it. I'm going to see if I can get my husband to read it. If not, I'm just
I
going
love
to,
it.
kind of read him things in the morning through it.
That's right. You'll start, all you got to do, and you're doing it, is you start changing your dance. And
Mhm.
trust me, your hubs is the first one to notice the change. And so much of the time, just my husband just kind of rolls with it. He's like, okay, I guess we're doing
Yeah.
this now. I mean, he's pretty therapized, but it's helpful.
That's probably me again wanting to help everyone, but there we go. Okay. So I'll just do it with your book. We'll do that one good deed and then we'll let it go. We'll let it go.
That's right.
Okay. I'm so grateful for you. Thank you so much for coming on. You guys, like I said, everything is linked up in show notes. And one of the most fun gifts we can give to Terri is to screenshot this podcast and let her know what your biggest takeaway was. It's always fun to just know like what impacted them, what hit on this
Yeah.
podcast, and give her a tag. Terri, what's your Instagram?
Just at Terri Cole,
At Terri Cole.
TerriCole. Yeah.
Perfect. And we'll link that up too. And thank you so much again for coming on the show. We're so grateful for you. And you guys definitely go and grab this book. It is life changing. There is not a person who has not experienced something like this in this book that will totally affect your year and give you more space and more energy. So, you guys, until next time, earn your happy. Bye, everyone.